Right now I'm in my apartment on the third floor and I can't go outside. I'm lucky that I just bought my groceries yesterday. I don't know who could have done that, but at this time I know a few other things. I know that it was someone from the tenant, since it seems in the door indicate that they were welded shut from the inside. I know that's one of my neighbor's friends from the next, which tells me that they are still in here with us. I know that we don't know who it is, nobody is taking the blame so far, and I know that there's a dead body outside. But don't let me get too ahead of myself. I'll explain everything in a minute. I live in a small and very old apartment complex on the far outskirts of a small town. It's only 5 stories high, no elevator, and it was built out of concrete panels all the way back in the 60s. It has no attic, so people who live on the last floor have to constantly worried about it, rain ruining their feelings. Extremely sound, conducive for their thickness of wall, so you never feel home alone, and the basement which connects to a sewer system which smells horribly in the spring. In Russia these kinds of buildings are called a crocheted car, named after Khrushchev. Obviously I get the appeal of a low-cost, easy to construct building, but I think there's not a single soul in the entire country who had missed them in 50 years. They should have demolished them, replaced them with something better, something newer. At this point the buildings are a health hazard. Usually only the older people live there, since it was the house they had received long, which is why my neighbors are mostly old people. And let me tell you, all the people in Russia are pretty mean. But I can't complain. I got this apartment from my late grandma, so at a young age I at least have my own place. Plus, the view from my balcony on the 3rd floor was great. It overlooks the forest, which technically is the border of our town. So no ugly buildings inside, just a ball in this nature which, as I was told, stretches for thousands of kilometers, and that direction an entire ocean of dark wood that curves beyond the horizon. Anyway, I live on a beach. It's pretty sweet if you don't account for the things that sometimes a washer. At first I was kind of bewildered. I went down the stairs to the 1st floor, yawning and stretching and hoping for a weekend to come faster, and I saw a crowd of people on their coats with their bags in their hands. The air was hot and damp from their collective breathing, and the air was quaking from the shouting. I couldn't make out what they were saying because they were all talking at the same time, but I could get the general mood. Some of them were confused, but mostly they were outraged. I didn't understand what was going on at first. It was 8 o'clock in the morning when everyone was either hurrying to their jobs or God knows where the pensioners go so early. But then I made it to the front of the crowd and my eyebrows shut up. In front of me a couple of men in their 40s are trying their hardest to push the door open. Only they couldn't. The entire frame of the iron door was wanted. I could see the metallic. See him running along the frame. Push harder. I have a doctor's appointment in an hour. One of the old women shot in Atlanta. It's no use. One of the men stood back and wiped the sweat from his forehead. The seam had already cooled down. Nothing short of a circular saw will open the store. Now we're locked in here. One of the women asked him to tell him that was boring on his terrible. I can't stay here, I need to get to work, everybody needs to get to work. The man stopped back at her. But the door is locked. What else do you want me to do? So what? We're going to stay here a lot because of some kid's prank. She squealed at a frequency I thought was impossible for a human voice to produce. I doubt that it was a prank. The man said, I've worked as a welder for 17 years, so I can tell you for sure the door was welded shut from the inside. There is a positive silence as everyone considered the meaning of his words. Somebody locked themselves in with the rest of the tenants. The why? Who the hell would do something like that? I asked, aloud to no one in particular, some maniac for sure. The old woman grunted. She gave me a mean eye and then it took my sleeve. Say, what apartment are you from? I don't recall seeing you here. Is that you've done that? She pointed at the door. You and your good for nothing friends, probably open the butcher, us all, and take her money, right? She was getting louder with each sentence and I suddenly found myself at the center of attention of a really mean and annoyed crowd. I had to defuse the situation fast or else I wouldn't be able to reach my apartment till 1 p.m. and his grandson. I explained, to feeling angry, that my words, the God-honest truth, sound like an excuse in that context. I've lived here for the past year and I just came down from my apartment. Leave him be, an old hag. One of the men from the back of the crowd interfered. I've seen this light here many times. He's good people, help you with my bags. More than once the woman was obviously humiliated by such a development and gave me a death glare, but thankfully she didn't say anything else. Adorable buzz behind me here. Someone from the crowd was knocking on the door. The door is stuck and I need to get to work. How are they going to help you? Someone from the crowd asked the hole through the window. That's how the man replied, period. It seemed that more people joined him as I could hear numerous fists banging on the door. Hello, can you help me with the door that I can't seem to open it? We suddenly heard a voice coming from outside, from beneath the water door. Somebody was caught outside when the door was welded shut. I can't find any explanation as to why they were trying to enter our building at such an early hour. Perhaps they were out for grocery, perhaps it was a postman, and it doesn't matter. Now the people started talking all at the same time, trying to explain the situation to the man or to ask him to call for help. What did a man him? To explain himself, but he never had a chance to answer the questions. My God, what is it? He screamed in terror. The door is. He started pulling on the door handle, hoping, spell silent the terror. And the man's voice was so genuine that no one had any doubts that he indeed saw something horrifying. Let me in, please. You, screamed again, desperately hoping to muster the strength to open the door. And we couldn't see, of course, what scared him so much, but we could hear it, the heavy snowing tomorrow. At the same time, it was probably what our ancestors had felt when they watched one of their own at being chased by a lion. Run, run while you still can. The crowd shouted, but it was already too late. There is a lot of thought. And the door shut. The unknown creature ran straight into the man, pressing into the door with its massive frame. I could hear grow and ask, but I couldn't recognize the animal. The door traveled again and again as the creature was throwing the man against it, hoping to get him to stop resisting. He told the creature finally got to his throat. Someone gasped in terror, help him. Somebody from the back of the crowd shot at. Nobody moved. There was nothing we could do. The iron they protected us from the creature. Outside was also separating us from the man. You were so close to us and yet he was dying alone. There is another strike at the door and the crowd stepped back. The creature was testing the metal. It could hear his inside, but the door stood still. Whoever had wanted to shut did a good job. After that it fell silent. We didn't know whether it left her, if it was standing right behind the door. Turn up vitamins time. We couldn't check either way. It was at that moment that we heard them, the sirens, old and rusty, but they were coming back to life after decades of sleep to fulfill their purpose, to warn people of an incoming catastrophe. The years of slumber did not do them any good. They started out sounding low, but with each second, as their mechanical voice cords were stretching and warm enough. They were getting louder and higher until the familiar sound that everybody that hoped to never hear was drowning out to everything else. The sirens are getting louder, but in the pauses between the pulses I could hear that the noise of the town outside was getting quieter. After a few minutes the commotion outside was gone. As everyone evacuated, we were left alone. Probably the only people in the entire district alone stranded was something dangerous roaming. Beneath our windows I can hear house and screams in the distance. Its voice sounds almost human, but I now know the difference. You could tell that clearly when it's how I was followed by a human scream. Now you might think that there is panic among the tenants, but you would be wrong. A distinctive feature of Russian people is that they are more than anyone else in the world just don't care. I say this with absolute certainty. Once they learned that the police told him to stay put and they just calmed down, I can sort of see the reasoning why panic when you're protected by the walls. Can't you stay at home for a few days? The police told us that it's dangerous outside, so why would you go there? Lived through the 90s, you wet your mud. You think this is going to scare me here? So while how long is this please? They decided to stay positive, and well, if they don't want to go, then I don't have much of a choice either. I'd rather than her, Fort Worth the majority of people, even if they aren't the most pleasant company than risk of going out. Besides, it's not like there's any immediate threat to my life. Right, mine's still here. It's still alive, so that's good. Still, I'm starting to doubt whether I'm as protected as I thought I am. Today was the day when we were planning to try to leave this place, but with everything that had happened, I don't think we'll be leaving anytime soon. The water and electricity is still working, which is surprising. It might be that not the whole town has been evacuated or that there's some skeleton crew left to take care of the necessities. Just to be prepared for everything, I filled the bathtub with water in case it stops running or something happens to the pipes. I'm also eating only perishable goods for now. The rest can wait. I guess that I'll clear out the refrigerator first and switch to grains and potatoes afterwards. The phones aren't working anymore, and neither is the internet. Without the VPN, I guess it would be smarter to turn it off completely, but someone at the local ISP's office is either not very smart or has left this window of opportunity for people like me. On the day that it all started, everyone in the building have been trying to contact the police. I remember on the first day that you could hear them all through the walls cursing that they didn't pick up the phone or begging to come help us. When someone did pick her up after, the policemen were seemingly shocked that when they learned that we were still here, but they told us how it was, nobody was coming to rescue us. It would all be over very soon. Perhaps the rest of the country is not even aware of what's going on here, and I'm not surprised. Our leaders have a long history of keeping me catastrophes under wraps. The beast has been very active. On the first day, though I hadn't seen it. I heard later from and every time I could hear the entire building fall silent, a woman on it sounds and determine how far away it is. We couldn't hear it. On Saturday, only a few car alarms have been set off, implying that something still works there, and on Sunday for now, let's just say that we didn't see him during the day, all of the headlight people to believe that this whole thing was going to be over soon. On the first day everyone is staying in their apartment. On the second day, people started going out. People were walking up and down in the stairwell talking to each other and even invited their neighbors in for a dinner that I never seen these people getting so social. Usually they just give you a dust there. I could do the clanking and play some cops and of kettles and children of the... I can understand that even the soldiers on the front lines of World War II had reported out. Unbearable the boredom was when nothing was happening. Plus, it's been instilled into us to stay together in times of hardship by the very nature. So, realizing that it wasn't a good idea to spend my days alone, I decided to pay a visit to the only friend that I had within these walls, Nikita, who lived on the before we been buddies. He noticed me when I was entering my apartment and he invited me in for some tea. He was a small guy around my age and was a casual tabletop gamer. We had spent many evenings playing Monopoly and Jackal and the past with him and his girlfriend. It was her who opened the door, and I instantly recognized from her look on her face that something was very wrong. Nikita was staying at his friend's home the night before. Natasha explained he was supposed to come home in the morning and we took a day off for Friday and we were supposed to go out of town, but he didn't make it in time. She didn't cry though. Looking at her eyes, I realized that she already had for many hours. I could tell that she could use my support, so I invited myself in over a cup of tea. She shared with me that she was feeling play Rihanna. She was afraid that he was close to the building when the siren started wailing it, and then she had nightmares, wear black pants, our dragon, and the darkness. She shared with me that she had heard that someone couldn't get out on Friday morning and then she was afraid that it was him. So I reassured her that it wasn't the case. As I was there, I heard the victim's voice and I would be able to tell if it was Nikita. That brought her some relief. But still she was dressed. I can't sleep very well since then. She told me that I wake up in the night train footsteps above. I keep hoping that it's him, but I know that it's not the case. On my way back from Natasha, I met the man who had claimed that he was a professional water. He was carrying a box of tea to his neighbors. Curiosity got the best of me, so I struck up a conversation with him to learn if it's something about. It's all over the place, he informed me. The worlds are mostly fine, so I can tell that whoever did that, nobody was doing, but they are really messed up at other spots, especially at the corners, and there was a lot of slug left. Whoever did it was probably in a hurry and drunk. His hands seemed to be trembling. I can't stop thinking about it. The perpetrator is. There are 4 separate flights of stairs, 5 floors. 4 apartments are each floor groups around a stairwell, so 80 apartments in total. If I went by elimination I would be able to find him eventually. It's not like I have anything better to do with the moment. I've spent a good hour examining the door trying to spot some clues. All I found is a cigarette. But they may not even belong. Where am I? A Russian brand? So use Apollo. It's really nasty stuff, makes you cough your lungs out. I might take a look at the paint cans mounted on each flight of stairs, the improvised ashtrays. Maybe I'll find something this way. Some people just don't have the luxury to kick back in Brazil some personal quest, like I do. They generally need to get out. An old man in his early 60s and knocked on my door. He had been planning to get it from the nearby drugstore in the morning that we were all locked in. During the last few days he had used up his last reserves and now desperately needed more. He had said that he had hoped that it would all be over before that would happen, but time was playing against him and now he had no choice but to ask people to share their own if they had any. I didn't, but it's wondered if any other tenants to hide that, in fact in order to save some for themselves. When I know that I hadn't seen his face before he informed me that he was from the next flight of stairs. He had to get up onto the roof to come over here when all of his neighbors told him that they didn't have any insulin or not. I had heard that there had been shortages of insulin and the drugstores lately, which is probably why the old man didn't have enough stock on him. The drugstore is just across the road from our building. He can play. I can see it from my window. They were supposed to bring in a new batch on Friday morning, but when I came downstairs the door had already been welded shut, His last sentence intrigued me, so I asked how early that he tried to leave the building, and it was 6 a.m. Sunday, he informed me. The pharmacist told me that the truck with insulin was going to arrive at 9 a.m., but I thought that I might get in the liner to make sure that turn off. This has left me very heartbroken, but it also gave me a clue. The perpetrator must have finished what he was doing before his 6 a.m., and if that old man I need an insulin was able to get up under the roof, surely the mysterious perpetrator could do the same. That would alarm the world. All the doors shut from within. Perhaps it was even him was waking up to Tasha at night, or maybe someone else I didn't want to jump to the most, unless it's already here hiding in one of the apartments. There were talks that we can make a break for it, make a rope out of bed sheets hanging from the window and then get down from the second floor one by one and then head to the other side of town. We were acting like a group. Today was the day that we are going to set this plan into motion, but it didn't come to me. Last night I woke up from a sudden sound, and when I opened my eyes, it was already over here. But I know what I had heard, the scream, how similar to the one that the beast produced, only someone different. I lay in the dark with my eyes open, waiting for her to repeat, but there was only silence. I heard footsteps above. It seemed that I wasn't the only one who had been woken up by it. I'm getting up to my face. I glanced on my phone, it was 3 a.m. I tried going back to sleep, but I couldn't keep my eyes closed. The implications of it were keeping me awake, deciding that I'm not going to sleep anymore. Here I got up and I headed for the balcony. No, hey there, my neighbor Maximum startled me. His balcony was a few meters away from me and he also decided to go out for a smoke. Even though I was in November 9th, he was wearing only his underpants. You heard that too? He pointed at the forest with his cigarette. I nodded, yeah, you think it's back. And it didn't sound like it? Maximum confirmed my suspicions. It sounded different, you know, like a different breed play Havana. Yeah, I thought so too, and your mind passing me one. I asked Maximum and he threw me the entire pack. Take it. You might need all of them before taking a cigarette. My glance to the park, so you see below my curiosity is fine, but I crunched it. I didn't want to think about that at the moment. We smoked in silence for some time moving down there, but I only looked in time to see something big entering the forest and my blood ran cold. It was standing there throughout all of our conversations and neither me nor Maxima noticed it. We were merely chat and as the beast below was, by the time, listening to our voices. Have you seen it? Maximum loudly whispered. I didn't. I started, still shocked that the creature play been hiding from for the last few days. The one that had crushed a man's windpipe with his jaws was a mere meters away from me. Hold on, I'll light it up. I searched my pockets for her phone, pulled it out, turned on the flashlight and pointed it at the forest at the very next moment. I shot it and dropped it at the very last moment and I was not ready to see something like that. The phone's flash, was not particularly powerful, so the color of lights quickly dissipated and yet some of the photons had found their way between the branches deep into the forest to reflect from the beast lone a giant eye the size of a small platter, and travel back to me. At that short moment I was unwillingly participating in a staring contest with it. Something told me that I was the first man to do so and to walk away to tell about it noise. Today, Max, I'm not on my door. He told me that all the able member organizing into Malaysia and they offered me to join him. I decided that it was best to agree if all able member grouping up and I would be wise to stick with them, even if it could mean that I would be the building at first line of defense. Plus, I'll be able to keep my eyes on them. The beast has become more stealthy, but sometimes, after spending hours looking out the windows, I can see alerting behind the branches in the forest. I'm convinced that it came from the forest. Now it feels like at home, they're spending the majority of its time there. The surfacing only. Did you take a glass of us to check if we're still there? My fridge is already empty. Even with me rationing the food, it ran out. How much quicker than I had expected. Luckily I still have my grains and potatoes. Most of the old people don't seem to be complaining, and I can understand why. With them survived another pension. They have learned to stretch the food until the next month plus. They're old enough they can't afford to go out for groceries every day, so they wait until they learn about some sales somewhere and then they go there to stock up for a month, even if said sale's on the other side of the town. They're probably stocked up for a few months ahead, and I can't stop thinking about it. The tap water is starting to taste funny too. I'm glad I filled my bathtub to be ready for something like that. Some people are warning everyone not to drink it and to hear all kinds of rumors as to why we shouldn't, from it having some drugs mixed into it until it being poisonous. To take care of everyone. Personally, I don't think it's so far. It's very small and we patrol, only our flight of stairs in the roof. But he had started to try and convince people from the neighbor and wants to join us as well. He sounds very convincing and I can see why people are joining him back, the illusion of control, even though we don't have anything. Brooms and knives are, in my case, a hatchet for me too. People are not less scared to leave their apartments again. They trust us. I guess it reminds him of the old times when volunteer militias on the streets that looked after the neighborhood were a common thing. However, not everyone is willing to join his cause. The farthest flight of stairs to the right give us a rather cold shoulder when we decided from the roof, but their faces red and swollen from constant drinking, while the others had prison tattoos on them. All of them read to alcohol and the sounds of a bloody jack, a Russian music genre that consistently of obscene ballads of criminal life played in the background. Somewhere far on the distance I heard anything. I didn't pay much, exposing a tattoo of an Orthodox church bad to the ground. When he hears out trying to play cops here, you said, with a fake granite, making sure to show us every two of them. Look at that one, guys. He pointed to me, so young, and already trashed the crowd behind them, half-hearted, laughed. I felt it show running down my spine. The look in their eyes was dangerous. It was like staring into the eye of the beast again. It's for the greater good, maximized. Staying at the man. We're all in danger and we need to stick together and we can look after ourselves. The man replied, playing a gun from behind his belt. For a moment, and we don't need anyone stupid around you either. Shoulder Knee was talking to me, letting me know that it was time to go. I felt sick that the man could talk to us like that and get away with it, but there was nothing I could do with. Hey, bring some girls next time. One of the men shouted as we were leaving in. The crowd laughed. Well, maximum set on our way back and it seems like we have a hottie here. He explained, and it's the place where the criminals gather after they observe their sentence to celebrate. It seems like a bunch of them got caught up in here with us and they don't seem like it affected them. They seem to just be partying all day long, which means that soon I'll be out of food and I don't be their neighbors. Maximus, a nice guy. I'm still not sure if he's the mysterious Walter who would like to fall in. The only clue I have is the brand of cigarettes City gave me here. It's a stretch to think that he's the only one in the entire building who smokes them, while they are not exactly common. I had seen people smoke and plenty of times I tried talking to him about what he thinks about the identity of the water. Who could it be in? Why did he do that? And while he was talking, I was looking at his face to spot something. If you were to get nervous, then it would be a dead giveaway. But his face remained his entire time. And do you even got? And what their motives were? Either he was a very good liar or it just wasn't him. After that, Max and had me check the basement to see whether we could escape through the sewers or if something can find its way through them. Truth be told, I was scared to go down there. The concrete walls covered in moss and cobwebs stretching from wall to wall weren't exactly reassuring. Oh, really scared me. Where the tiny window? I would barely be able to fit my head. And if I tried, but I was still afraid that something could find its way in the basement, ran under all the building with all flights have any door leading down there, so it was hard to find the hatchet led down to the sewers. When I finally found in the corner of the basement, I experienced a mix of emotions. It was awesome welded shot, which meant that nothing could get in through it, but also that nothing can get out. Over the last few days and we had started hearing gunshots in the distance. It sounds like a machine gun and I don't want anyone in our town has one. Maybe the police have a few AK-74s. Sometimes it almost sounds like there's a war going on in the distance. It fills me with hope that we're going to be rescued sooner, but I can't help but wonder, what are they shooting after so much ammunition? Aside from that, not much happened during that time. One day fell on another and I spent the majority of my time with Natasha, and we could both use some distraction for the world around us. I was at her apartment yesterday playing Monopoly when we heard confused coming from the outside looking out the window that was overlooking our town. I felt my heart in desperation. The man must have how to make a break for it and rush towards the drugstore to get the insulin that he needed to survive. It was either that or a slow and painful death. He disappeared behind me, coronavirus, and a few seconds later I heard the glass break it. He must have shattered the window of the drugstore to get inside the sound echo to cross the empty streets, and Natasha shut it in fear. I knew what she was going through, if that of the beast somewhere very close. The man grabbed the rope and started climbing up. He made it about halfway when his weak arms came out and he fell to the ground, old and frail. He was unlikely to make it, even if he wasn't malnourished and weakened by his disease. He slowly got up, rubbing his hip, and tried to climb up again. When the creature showed his head around the corner, play finally, see it with my own eyes. It was beyond my wildest expectations. It was clear that whatever it was not from this world. Its front legs were thick and barely here, ending with paws with long fingers. I love to disturbing these similar to human fingers. The high legs were much shorter and, once again, parody of human nature, looks very similar to human legs. All of its body was covered in black, long, thick, fur, except for its, which was bald, exposing its gray skin, and it, in the center of its almost human-looking head, a single eye rotating wildly seeking out its target. It stopped on the old man and the beast that I'll take a little girl. The man was not giving up and trying to crawl up, but with his bust it happened. He could barely call 1 meter above the ground and his arms alone could not pull him up. The bees must have noticed that because it didn't rush it down efforts to escape it when it was just a 5 m away. The man jumped back to the ground and tried to escape, but the creature covered the distance separating them and one quickly leave. It raised its paw above him, clenching his fingers into a fist, and I looked away, but I still heard the wet splatter when it's just to set it out of the man's head like a hammer, taking care of him instantly. The only proof that they had been there was a long trail leading around the corner towards the forest. I thought that the day was eventful enough, but last night something else happened. I woke up from the sound that had hot to me for so long that I wanted to know so much about the sound of someone now welding something. I jumped out of my bed and listened. I wasn't sure where the sound was coming from, but when I looked out of the window I noticed the light coming from the roof above, somewhere from the direction where the criminals resided. I rushed out of my apartment just in time to see Maximum leave his own. He was wearing nothing but boxers and I could see it in his eyes that he was in a rush. Just like me, you wanted to learn the identity of a mysterious Walter. When to. The roof of the water was already gone, but not before finishing. What have you been doing? The door leading down to the criminals was now reinforced. Do they make shift? Made out of stairs railings. At that moment I realized that the sun had before. The clanking of metal was probably the Walter working on the railings to give them the necessary shape. The mysterious water that I've been chasing for the past week was one step ahead of me and I couldn't get there. And even if I did find my way in, I'd have to deal with the criminals first. They'd let me know before that I was not welcome there. The burning question, however, was not who he was. What bugged me the most was, why did he do it? What made him install the gates in the door leading to the roof? Perhaps there is something that we didn't know about? I thought I would be as far as play. Bad news. What is? This morning we found one of the tenants dead on the stairwell. There are no wounds on his body yet, but he was filming at the mouth and his skin had the nastiest shade of purple. I recognized his face. It was the man on the first day and said that he worked as a welder in the past. His grieving wife told us that he had no history of heart diseases, which led us to a single conclusion: he was poisoned. The problem of having too many witnesses to take care of itself spread the message: people, we're here and we're still alive. There's something outside my door. Something's working at the stairwell, going up and down all 5 floors. I was alerted to its presence by a scream one late evening. Someone must have gone out for a smoke and to maybe socialize with his acquaintances when they saw that there are no signs of struggle nor any yelps of pain, only terror. And I'm glad that nature, and so that I need to cry out when you're faced with something horrifying, something so unexplainable. Your death becomes a noble sacrifice, a meaningful event when you should come to your terror and your last moments. And I barely managed to squeeze my own scream of terror in when I realized that the streak the creature made it was not the one that I heard before. It was not something that somehow I managed to find his way into our apartment complex despite the precautions that had been taken. I spent half an hour looking out the eye hole trying to catch a glimpse of it. The dim light bulb outside provided just enough lighting to see what was going on. At one point, something suddenly obscured the light and I play pitter-patter across my door. A second of confusion was followed by a terrifying realization and I jumped back from the door, trying to hold back my scream of surprise and shock. Whatever it was, it just crawled across my door and its many legs it could crawl on the walls. This means that the door on the roof is now a huge opening and our defenses. In the morning, me and the other guys from our militia carefully stepped out to take a look at the damages that are done. We had found a bloody spot on the 4th floor and a long trail of it was led to the roof there and led towards the edge of the roof where it ended. The creature not just found its way into her house, it took one of ours and then I dragged him off to his nasty. Since there are 2 creatures now, I feel like I should start giving them the names, and the ape. It sounds like a fitting description for the one that has been terrorizing us for the last few days, and on the next day everyone unanimously started calling the newcomer the Crawler. So that's what we were going without. So if the ape is the juggernaut that watches the streets, the Crawler is the infiltrator that sneaks in and attacks us where we live. A demon in the Crawler. God, just 2 weeks ago I wouldn't have thought that those are the words. We put a lock on the door that leads to the roof. I think it was long overdue and it's just. We never thought that we would need to do that. I pray that it will suffice to keep it out, and I make sure to have my curtains closed at all times. At 8:20 one day, look outside and see that thing crawl across my window, and I'd hate to see me inside. I need to pray ready for consumption. I'm more and more concerned with what our end game is. There is no chance that the water in the pipes could have gone so bad then in just over a week that it would become so toxic. Bacterias don't kill you on one night. They don't make you foam with your mouth. They don't make your skin turn purple. The water has some toxins in an hour, which tells me that our government, we, are no more than unwanted eyewitnesses. If we make it to the other part of town with a gun, we will meet a firing squad. The food becomes a problem. Yesterday I heard someone walking around asking the neighbors if they have some salt, just a cooking salt, to make their boring dish more pleasurable. I heard 3 of my neighbors tell them to get lost, but who am I to judge it when they run my bell? I didn't open the door, and I know that it's just that they were looking for her, but you can never be too careful. Perhaps it was their way of gauging the situation. Perhaps they think that if I have solved the spare, that I had plenty of other food inside and that time a viable target. Perhaps I'm just talking nonsense. 2 days ago I carefully checked the door in the basement that led to the flight of stairs where the bandits live. It was locked out of hanging back, neither I nor any of the tenants of anything. It could be broken down. I need to get to the welder at this personal question. Mine that started out of boredom and curiosity has grown into a necessity and a prerequisite for my survival. They must know something. They are calling all the shots on where everybody goes and what parts of the building that we have access to, and they might have the tools to get us all out of here. I've thought about it, and my only chance of making it is getting it to her about. Whichever he happens to have cut the hatch that leads to the sewers open in this game period, it's probably a maze down there. So if I make a wrong call and where to get out of it and come face to face with the military or the beast outside, I'm done for her, but it's better than pushing my luck by trying to escape through the surface. The only problem is getting to him before the bandits he lives with get to us. The cage that he's installed on the roof entrance has, which means that it is they who decide to enter, is their flight of stairs, which means that they pretty much have a fortress within the fortress. I have fear that's when those doors open they'll come out not to cooperate, not too big for food, but to hunt to prey on the weak, and so far we have no solid way of fighting them back, but the crawler and the bad. It was the apartment in the same stairwell as mine that it chose to attack. I heard its grunts outside, the screams of a terrified people downstairs, the weeping metal that was being torn apart. I don't know what the people downstairs did to provoke the beast. Perhaps they have thought that the cage is a protect him and they didn't have the curtains closed. Perhaps they saw the creature and decided to indulge themselves in a staring contest with it. I don't know. I didn't ask. One of the tenants who had lived there managed to escape. I could see the terror in her eyes when I walked out of my apartment to see what was going on, just in time to have a rush past me, but I knew that to someone else was less lucky. I heard the screams of a man who they pinned down. A little loud dogs when it's 5 o'clock with the man's flash, and you know that thing where you can tell where the sound is coming from but how much it is distorted by the echo. Well, judging by how it all sounded, I realized with terror that these screams were coming from that apartment on the first floor and not the woman falling in terror. It didn't close the door on her way out, and which meant that when they was done with the man downstairs, it would be free to enter the stairwell. And wrong, all 5 floor, is it? Perhaps it wouldn't even be able to leave if it got lost here. I had to do something quick. It was very risky to go down there and try to close the door, but I know that if I didn't, then at that moment I would be dead within a few days. It wasn't bravery that pushed me to do such a reckless action, it was desperation. I was facing a paradox: stay safe and die, or risk your life and live, and my body was telling me that I wanted to live. I carefully made my way down to the first floor and I took a peek at the door. Just as I suspected, it was wide open. I could hear the ape shit on. It's already sounding pretty, but I could also see the key already in the keyhole. Carefully, try my best and not to make a noise, I changed towards the door. I wanted to scream and tear from the fact that my steps weren't completely some ass, but I guess the creature didn't hear. Start over the sound of the bones by breaking under its bite. I was now right next to the door. One more step I would be inside the apartment. The April is now mirror meters away from me, somewhere around the corner. If I messed up, I would have a second, maybe two, to say my prayers. There was no going back now. Carefully, I said. The key out of its keyboard stopped. Take a stab. I slammed the door shut and started shoving the key into the keyhole. But my trembling hands can pull that off. A muffled roar came from within the apartment and I felt a massive body slam into the door from the other side. Luckily, the door seemed to be reinforced. The extended had made sure to protect themselves from burglaries. As with them living on the first floor, they were the prime targets. My legs were twitching from all the adrenaline. And Emma, I took a deep breath. And then a woman later I turned it, locking the door. The beast was now so dude. I left the apartment through the window, if you are later after it was done, raging and consuming the after that, all the tenants who lived on the first floor and moved in with their neighbors above. They brought their food supplies with them and I'm glad to say that people upstairs didn't mind them. They realized that it would be heartless to let them live on the first floor or hang out on the stairwell where they were the easy prey. Natasha had an old man move in with her as well, but still, even though our casualties were minimal, we had taken a huge hit, our home even deeper. I'm currently thinking about how to find the welder and get him out of here without alerting any thoughts. The roof is not an option, but there's still a basement door that can be broken. I'll discuss that with Maximum tomorrow. It's time to add time to get out of here. It's really weird how everything is both extremely. My life is in constant danger and we don't have a solid plan yet. But I can't think about it all the time. As weird as it sounds, I'm tired of constantly thinking about my chances of survival. And when monsters in our classroom window, you don't have that sense of urgency, you don't get anything at all. It feels like you exist only to react to them, interact with them and maybe eventually end up as there. Over the past few days, I received a lot of advice from Florida, and you guys have a rough there. I still wish that I would rather be there, though at least it has colors. Everything here is so great that I want to poke my eyes out, and we prepared for food and water shortages, but there were things that we didn't consider. For starters, there are 2 dead bodies in our building and they're starting to rot. When Play, who got poisoned, died, his widow kept his body in their apartment. She dressed him up in nice clothes and laid him down on their sofa, and we even suspect that she spent some water to wash his body. But 2 days ago she came to us asking for help. He was starting to swell up and smile. It was a weird sight seeing him lying there in a tranquil pose, arms and his chest, and that tiny sofa under a painting of a river that's so swollen and purple. It seemed that detox and continued its working, and the smell was unbearable, and the first few minutes that I've got there it was make me want to vomit, and knowing that it was a human body, something that was a living individual just some time ago, was making it even more disturbing. She wanted us to take him to the basement. But Maximum objective, his smell will attract the predators. I want to break even more. If they smell his statue, we need to throw compromising the safety of the living maximum where the rest. She screamed and tried to break free. The maximum wouldn't budge when she realized that she couldn't overpower him. She has switched to defiance, a client at him with her free hand, and maximum didn't defend himself, choose into stoically, adore her ass at giving her the opportunity to take it all out on. She wouldn't get in her way. In a desperate, last-ditch attempt to resist, she grabbed onto the door, but maximum yanked her away from it. Her up was strong enough to leave scratches on the doors. I wouldn't surface, and one of her nails was left. His body blanket. Me was easier to carry him that way, both physically and mentally. We carried him to the roof. One of us said some prayers and we tossed him over the edge. We didn't even look how he fell, only hearing the heavy thud when his body collided with the ground and rushed to safety before the crawler showed up. Looking back, I don't feel guilty about what we did, but I feel guilty for not feeling guilty to you, and, if that makes sense, the body was already gone. The second body, the one of the man who got mauled in his apartment, was left where it was, and we know that the door to the apartment could off the intruders, so we didn't bother to do anything about it. I've talked to Maximum about the water in my plans. He likes my idea, but he warned me that there was nothing we could do at the moment. Sneak it in would be dangerous, and we didn't know where to log. It's dangerous to confront them. He told me that they are armed and they can overreact to us entering their territory. Maybe we should just let them know about our plan. That's why they will cooperate. I reluctantly agreed with them back then. We didn't know that the time for negotiation was already up, that those scumbags had already made up their mind. Because yesterday when I go to the 5th floor to waste some time with Natasha, I found my horror that the daughter of her apartment was wide open and there were signs of struggle taking place in her hallway. I suspected the worst, but also I didn't abandon hope. I rushed through all the rooms, but she wasn't ready to be found. Only the old man from the 1st floor that she had taken in was lying on the floor of the guest room. A small pool of blood had formed under his left side. He was still alive. She didn't answer my questions as to where Natasha was. Instead, I just whispering, "I'm sorry, young man, it's all our fault, the sins of the fathers." I didn't have time to hit his cryptic where it's. I needed to help him or he would die from bleeding. That but I do not touch. It was in danger at that very moment, perhaps somewhere very close. I rush back to the hallway trying to find any clue as to where there were a few drops of blood on the floor leading outside and towards the door to the roof. It was dangerous to enter the roof of my own, but I didn't care. I rushed outside looking around, nothing but a small, barely noticeable trailer droplets. I fear that it would lead me to the edge of the roof, but instead it was heading towards the cage door at the end of it, the one that led to the band. The cage is already locked. I started shaking it and screaming for them to let Natasha go. It's reckless of me, I know, if I had stayed there for a few more minutes. I didn't know that attracted crawler and be done with it. But one of the bandits emerged from the darkness beyond the cage and shook his pistol at me. "Keep it civil, your girlfriend is in good hands, so we'll take care of her. After all, how does that saying go? If you love her, let her go." I turned around and ran away, and I heard a few shots behind me, but luckily in bed missed me, and the man must have decided that not to spend more ammo on me. I had to act quick. It didn't even want to think about what they're going to do with her. Every minute, count it. As I was running down the stairs calling for men together, Rob hollering at the top of my lungs, "Sir, how many people started leaving their apartments to see what was going on?" They could hear the urgency of my voice and they didn't want to miss an important announcement. Never had I been so glad to see the faces of my neighbors before. Just 2 minutes later I told him what had happened. Two women rushed to the 5th floor to help the old man. Melissa, you are, some old woman from the back row said, you can't even protect us in our homes. Shove it, give me the direction. And surprisingly there were no woody torrents. Hey, kiddo, what's going on? Maximum steps of the crowd to see what was happening. I told him what was up. His eyes turned to bloodshot and his fists and trembled with furious, we're going to take her back. He confidently heard the roof. I followed him. I could see that other man, even those who were just a few minutes before I had almost been shot. Only now I wasn't alone. There were at least 10 men with me. Now, it didn't matter if we probably couldn't break through the gates. What matters? At 1:10, angry men show up at your doorstep. You listen to what I have to say. Open up, Maximum, open opera. I'm going to break these down. What's all the ruckus? The same man who had seen previously and began to walk up to the cage. You can't ask me an angry daze before looking away while he looked confident. His earlier smugness was gone. Give us back the girl over. Feed you to those monsters outside. Maximum hollered the bandits, his hands in a mocking gesture of fear. Easy pops. We just took a girlfriend. Tell me that, right, Maximum, kicked the cage and fury. And the man on the other side had jumped and surprised. It was not clear that he was feeling tense and his calmness was just an act. No, if you think that we can't tear these down, you're very mistaken. Maximum childhood, calm down. I was just joking. Okay, we can all use a bit of humor these days. The man said, doing his best, keep smiling, I'll go look for her prepared. I was getting more and more anxious. Who knew for how long she had been in there? Who knew what they had been doing to her? Every minute countdown, we heard some arguing coming from within. The men were shot at each other, but due to the echo I couldn't make out with everything. Thankfully I didn't hear Natasha's screams. The shining subsided and then, a few minutes later, the man walked up to the cage separating us. I could see Natasha, shitey, nasty, bruise under her eye and dry. The blood on her left indicated that she must have been bleeding from her nose. Thankfully, her clothes were entitled with no signs of terror, and there is a strange spark in her eyes that seemed almost out of place, a spark of enthusiasm and determination. Here's your girl. The man grunted, giving her a push towards us, and she was passing him. We didn't do much to see. Now, Andrew, food. Maximum inquired, what are you talking about? It was a down payment for keeping her safe with us. It was the man's reply, and he closed the gates and walked away. Maximum grunted, and I could see the fury in his eyes to him. It wasn't over here, he wasn't going to let it slide. Something unknown in the distance roared. We heard back to safety. How are they? Did they cast Natasha once we are inside the building? But you raised your hand to stop me. I'm fine, don't worry about it. The little got scared when you saw that jerk bring me to them. He suspected something like this would happen. How did they get you? I asked her another question, but she shook her head. They lured me out, pretended to be one of the tenants from the next flight of stairs, told me that they were looking for some aspirin and it doesn't matter. She lowered her voice. Yes, he lives on the 3rd floor apartment at 73. They told me to go hang out with them while they were deciding what to do with me. It seems like they're taking good care of them in return for his help. I don't know what's happened to the other tenants, so he doesn't want to talk about them. So did you tell him anticipation? Yes, she looked around to see if anyone could hear us. The men were still descending from the roof and going straight inside her apartment to help with the old man who was still attended to inside. He says that he panicked. He was hunting in the forest for some game when he saw them. He says that there are dozens and maybe hundreds of them. They are migrating somewhere and we are turned on the sidewalk of their path. So he ran home and barricaded himself in all of us. Of course that was before he learned about the bandits said they moved in just at 2 nights before. But why didn't he run away? I wondered why not evacuated. He can't. He has a son and he is completely bedridden, paralyzed, below the waist and he's too weak to carry Emma, no elevators too. He thought that it would all be over in a day or two, but he miscalculated, I imagine, the situation the man had found himself in, trapping not only himself but his helpless child and everyone else in this hell. Even though I wanted to feel angry at him, I just couldn't. I told him about your plan. Natasha interrupted my train of thought. He says that it makes sense that he's willing to lend his tools and skills if we find a way to sneak him in his play garden. Well, there are constant patrols on the 4th and 2nd floor. Of course, they mostly drink and listen to music, but they have guns. I wanted to say something, but then Maximum approached Natasha and put a hand on her shoulder. You all right, girl? Yeah, I'm fine. Natasha said she didn't like the fire and Maxim's eyes. Good, good, good. He said, staring into the distance. I have a daughter, or anyone else for that matter. I made a decision, we need to strike them first. If you have passed, you got to smoke them out. He looked at Tasha in the face and the side of her wounds. I made him get his teeth. Tomorrow we'll burn there. Where is stairwell down? Right now I barely have enough strength to ride and my memories of the events that transpired a week ago are still fuzzy. But let's just say one thing, I'm still here, still inside this cursed building, weaker than ever Maximus, and joking that it was going to burn down the entire. So well, I had some others try to convince him not to do it. We reminded him that we would catch on fire as well, that they were at least 2 innocent people in there, one of whom was a young man who wouldn't be able to escape, but none of it mattered to him. We just have to start a fire big enough to make them move towards the road. He said maniacally, not in his own words, we'll be waiting for them there and once they get married, after that we can put the fire out. Well, we'll do our best, period, but I wasn't going to let it slide. And what about the water in his son? I reminded him they're just the prisoners there and they won't be able to escape the fire of the smoke. Are you ready to burn them down? I looked him in the eye, trying to kill him into his. He looked me straight in the eye and I could see that the flames of his anger were getting wilder. How can you be so sure that they were just prisoners in there? Because they said so. Why did they make such a convenient cage door for them? Haha, why did they lock us in here? Because it's so. I tried to explain, but Maximum stopped me before I could finish it. No, that's just what he says. He could have just stayed in his apartment and be done with it. So, unless you have a better plan, we're going to do it my way, he said before turning around to leave, and I do. Actually, I said it was back. He turned around and nodded for me to continue talking. My plan was crazy and dangerous, potentially even more so than the one Maximum offered. I was too anxious to stay, so I decided to spend the rest of the day at Natasha's place. Her apartment was crowded, a few women were helping her. Tend to the old man. He was breathing heavily, and his face was a very pale but is bleeding and stopped, and he was conscious again. "Young man, thank you," he said. At the same time, it was obvious that talking was causing him quite a lot of pain. "I didn't do anything," I said, and frankly that was the truth. The old man was just too confused to realize what had happened, that I had abandoned him and went after Natasha, not even bothering to call for help. But he just smiled at me here. So modest, lay still and don't waste your strength. One of the women told him, "You're too weak for that." He didn't pair words, any attention. "I'm sorry, young man, I'm sorry as well. It was our hubris to expect anything else. He's delusional and don't mind his words." One of the older ladies warned me and Natasha. For the first time of my life I'm quite saying thank you the man who died with us some degree of irritation before Wednesday. Listen to me again. There's no forgiving us. But still we thought that we had failed. But we were thinking globally. We were only thinking about them as if they were weapons aimed at the enemy. We never thought they would be so effective against the civilians, against our own people, if they ever broke out, when we underestimated them. But we thought they were already gone. "Quit your old Ramsey, old fool, and you too go," the old woman told me. "And Natasha, can't you see you're agitating him? We need him to rest." "This is my apartment," Natasha objected. But the woman just called. "You'll be back here tomorrow and go hang out at your boyfriend's place." She nodded at me. "He's not my, okay." There was no use arguing towards the door. She played back and we headed out. "Read my words. There will be more. You need to get out of here while you still can or they'll trample you along with everyone else." Last words of the old man sound like an ominous warning. It was in the deep of night when we started executing my plan. The first thing we needed was the lure. It was tough finding a piece of meat nobody wanted to share, and when they heard what they thought about her idea. But after a few hours of surgery now we finally found what we were looking for. And then it was time for the next part of the plan. We brought it to the basement with us and headed towards the store, the one that led to the store. Well, Maxwell wanted to burn down so much. The door must have been locked in a hanging live from the other side, but it was old and wooden. There is a way to get past it. Which would mean only one thing: we were busted. Throughout our operation, I could think about one thing only here: our failure. I'm at the death of the welder, even if we would have miraculously retrieved his tools from the ashes. That price was too high to pay. After 2 hours, the Windows drill finally reached the nail which held the place. And we spent the next hour working around it and taking turns. Try to make the hole bigger. Until 5 a.m. was separated from the wood. The hanging lock was just hanging from the door frame now, and the door will be opened. I took off my boots and I entered the stairwell. From then on, I was on my own. It only made sense for me to be the one to bear all the risks. After all, this was my plan. The men were just one floor above me. I could not hear them with a perfect clarity. One wrong step, one noise, and they come rushing down towards me. It was time for the greatest gamble of my life. I reached down towards one of the doors, unlocked of course. Why would they lock it? If they left? The first floor was dangerous that the ape could break down the grates on their windows, and so did I. I headed towards the kitchen, opened the window and put the piece of meat on the floor, and then, carefully, I'm taking a knife out of the drawer. I slipped my left palm and drew some blood rain in a few drops under the piece of meat. The plan is now set in motion. I didn't know how well they could smell, but I bet on the fact that my sunrise it would be tempted enough to break down the grates and enter the stairwell, where it would quickly deal with all the bandits. I hoped that the old water would have enough sense to lock the doors before that happened. Looking over my trap one time, I headed toward the exit. I made sure to leave the door open. That way, either the creature would find its way out of the apartment on its own, or the bandits would hear it and breaking in, which would prompt them to come over and take a look at what was going on, and drying it out and headed towards the basement door, only to find it wide open. The hammer, nails, and pieces of furniture, improvised wooden planks that we planned to use to barricade the door. After weird, I thought to myself before I heard it, the pitter-patter of many legs that was getting closer with each second, coming straight out of the basement that I came from. The windows was all I could think before I turned around and ran the windows, the tiny windows that had lined the walls of the basement, for an easy way for the crawler to get in. We had never seen it, so we had no clue whether it would be able to sneak out between a rock and a hard place, and it was approaching fast. No, I didn't have a lot of time to spare. I had two options: run back into the apartment that I just left with the beach was waiting for the ape, run up the stairs and towards the bad answer, and I hope that their shooting skills were great. I chose the second option. And a crisis. The primates had always thought to gain elevated position or move towards their peer, and that insane to a very deep within my psyche, remaged in the time of need. The men were so drunk and so be rewarded by my sudden appearance at. None of them had even reached for the gun, but they just watched me with the surprise toys as I rushed past them towards the third floor, toward the apartment at 73. Open up. I shouted as I started furiously banging on the door on Natasha's friend. Open up. One floor below me the man has screamed in terror. One of the screams was cut short as a pair of mighty jaws, maybe mandibles, crushed the man's throat. A second later I heard gunshots. The men above, the ones who guarded the fourth floor, started rushing down to see what was going on. I could hear their hurried stops, and a second they would turn around the corner and see me trying to break into their most important prisoner's apartment, the key client in the door. Hey, who the heck are you? I heard right behind me. They were just one flight of stairs away. I pushed the old man aside. I jumped inside his apartment, locking the door behind me, and listened. They had passed the door. There were more pressing matters to take care of one floor below. I'm Natasha's friend. I've come here to rescue you. Grab your metal song, a gas torture, whatever it is that you have. Let's go. I quickly said. But He tried to drop me, but I stopped him with a gesture. But I'll carry your son, don't worry about it. I don't have a gas torch anymore, he said. I shook my head. I couldn't have heard it right what I asked him. I'm out of gas, so you don't have anything to cut through metal? I inquired. It seemed impossible. No, that could be right. He shook his shoulders. I'm afraid not. But you told me that you have the tools. I wrote it down. I do, but they're useless. I just wanted to save my son, he explained, pointing towards the door to the other room. I just wanted someone to carry him out of here. He didn't have the tools. My question was pointless. I slid down the door and I grabbed my head, but I spent a few minutes like that, listening to the noises outside. The men rushed back to the fourth floor shooting at the pursuer, and after a few minutes, the sounds of a fight and struggle about stuff. I had to get out. I had no reason to stay here any longer. Should the bandit survive, they would come over to see who I was, and I opened the door. What, you're leaving? But I can't carry him without you. The old man pleaded. Please, I walked out and I closed the door behind him. I moved back to the basement carefully. At the same time, I couldn't feel any more fear. It all seemed to point this at that moment. 2 weeks I already told that I would be able to get out through the sewers, and now all hope is lost. The second floor had 2 corpses on it, one of them still clutching a pistol. I wasn't thinking about my survival at that moment, but I thought that it could still come in handy in the future. I grabbed the gun and folded, only to realize that the hands holding it was not yet dead. The man I thought to be dead opened his eyes, looked at me. He was too weak to form words, but he had enough strength to form a skull. He recognized me. You know, it was me who had the crawler, and a shot rang and I tumbled down the flight of stairs and cutting my side. The pain instantly snapped me back to reality. My survival instinct is coming back online. I wanted to live. I wanted to live, no matter how bleak my future lies. What if the crawler heard it? What if something else heard it? I need to hurry. My brain was producing one rush thought after another. I decided into the basement, squeezing my wound. I could barely see in the darkness, but luckily I was alone in there. I pulled the handle of the door that led to my stairwell. Nothing. I pulled at it again, it still didn't budge. It wasn't that I was too weak to open it. It was locked. I looked back at the windows line in the wall and I knocked on the door. I was too scared to shop for someone to open the other side of the door. They were coming from the apartments where I left the bed. It seemed that the ape finally took it. I heard its roar, heard the noise with which the grades were separated from the wall, and I shuddered. I had nowhere to run. I was cornered. If it could smell the blood on me. I could feel that my palm was full of blood, and there was probably a trail of blood drops behind me here. Remind me to help with that. It would be drawn towards the bloodbath on the second floor, and I sat down near the door and I closed my eyes. There was no point in staying alert. If anything, I had to make sure I would make as few sounds as possible. The sounds were starting to get quiet. The last thing I heard was its footsteps as it entered the stairwell and sniffed the air. That's where I was found, in the morning lion, and from all the lights right next to the door. Thankfully, someone had found me before I froze to death, otherwise you wouldn't be reading this. Throughout the last week, I was trying to recover my strength. Natasha was taking good care of me, and thankfully she found 2 penicillin somewhere, so I didn't have to worry about infections. It didn't check on my digestive system, though, which was less than ideal in my situation. The bulletin went to clean through, though there were 2 wounds on me. At least they didn't have to cut it out. I'm starting to regain my strength by my bed, but our limited food sources. It was tough. In fact, we're going to run out of food in just a few days. The tenants pulled all their food and I started rationing at a surprising development. For sure it's very soon there will be none left. I heard that some men were trying to raid a nearby grocery store. Not all of them returned. They hold that. I can't object to that. They've been feeding me for the last week, after all. But I can't help but think that we need to get out. Once the food runs out, we'll be too weak to do that. So my next update will probably be the last one. Sorry for not ready for so long, and it just seems for the longest time, but I guess I have to say goodbye. It would be set the light to do otherwise. Little by little I'm beginning to walk. The strength has been coming back very slowly to me on Spotify. With my poor diet, my body had cannibalized some muscle tissue in order to heal the wound. It's going to leave an ugly scar too. Right now I have a hole in my side filled to the brim with the scar tissue. I can't help it poke it all the time, even though it's disgusting. Of course I won't be going for any food ready anytime. I might be able to descend down the road, but to climb back up or carrying a dozen kilos of food, I'm here. That's just impossible. I'll repeat the fate of that old man who couldn't get back inside. So for the past week I've been lying in bed in Natasha's apartment, and I guess you could say it's become a hospital of sorts. She takes care of both me and the old man. One blow up a potato for each of us. She's been blowing them all while terror. I don't hear much about the outside, except for some rumors, and before I was locked inside the apartment complex. Now it feels like the danger lyrics right behind the door's threshold beyond our windows. It feels like my fortress that used to be the whole building had shrunk to fit inside and Natasha's apartment with my limited mobility. But I can't feel safe outside of her apartment. We're almost out of food. I can hear people bickering with each other. More and more it seems to have in a nasty direction, and each time Natasha steps out of her apartment I fear that she might not return. She says that crazy things going on outside, the things that just a month or even 2 weeks ago would make my hair stand up, but now I'm just too tired and exhausted with all this BS to react to. I feel like the same goes for everyone else in the building. Natasha says that a mysterious human figure, open Spotify, read in the very verge of the forest it signaled to the observers to come out and follow it, and then disappeared in the forest. It seemed impossible for her to be one of these survivors. I don't know. Another day the tenants from one of the apartments started screaming at their voices in their heads were too loud. I would believe that it was just madness taking it over, if it was just one person, but all three of them. And that's what was just very unlikely here. After a few nights, before we all woke up from the stampede, hundreds of legs were rushing from the forest to past her house and into the town. I could feel the building tremble from vibrations. Their mighty feet were signing into the ground, and the screeches of many bees were mixing together to a point where it was hard to tell which one. I heard before. No one dare look out the window, and we were all just hoping that they had all passed and let us continue living on our quite agitated. I never managed to get more than a few coherent sentences at a time out of him. It seems that the physical toll of his body, as well as whatever he talked about, a place far in the forest. He was confusing things, so I'm not quite sure. How wide is it? In some stories it's a town, in another is a base in the forest, sometimes it's a lab and sometimes an archaeological dig. It was built by the Soviets and it's been there long ago. But it all stories. One word always came up the door. He had worked. There is an intern. He says that our entire town was both by the Soviets, precise to because of that location. He said that he got his apartment back when he was assigned to the project and was very proud of being a homeowner at a young age. Whatever they had been doing there at the higher UPS ended up disappointed with the results, so the project was closed and the time was declassified even before the fall of the Union. He said that he had forgotten what he had seen there until a month ago. But now this by 10 decades of abandonment. Something was happening there again, something that unleashed the hordes of these monsters. As the man himself said it, something on the other side is finally made contact with us 40 years after we sent out her first signal. He didn't elaborate on what the other side was. A worthy beast were coming from in such volume, soon after he shut himself off from the world around him and he wouldn't talk anymore. 2 days ago, the mysterious figure was back again, and this time I got a good look at it, a long black winter jacket with a hood that obscured its face, a dark spot so clearly visible on the snow, and I say it because, despite a looking completely human, I can't accept it as such. The only thing different was that on that day, some people had followed it into the woods. I was almost one of them. The voice that I heard my head was just at 2. Alluring to ignore. Yesterday it came back again, and once more, with a wave of his hand, people started crawling out of windows to follow it. Some were just hanging over rails and falling down into the snow from the second floor. Before getting up and following his call, ignoring the cold and broken the packages, I had to restrain Natasha from following. It seems that some people are more susceptible to what's called, and so she has. I was fighting it for a good 5 minutes. She didn't hit or bite me, she was just silently pushing with her whole body towards the door, trying to get out of the building and follow it. I was shouting at her, even hitting her, to bring her back to her. Since, all the while, feeling the strength of my already weakened body, and throughout all that, I can almost feel the creature is awaiting days, piercing through the solid walls and judging me, looking over Natasha, disapproving that she was making it wait for her. Finally it laughed and Natasha came back to her senses. I almost burst out crying when I realized that she was back with me over the last few weeks and she'd become the closest person to me here, almost like a sister. To see her Bachelor of Sciences was a great relief. But then he'll cold our past us, and with the terror you realize that we were the only two people left in the apartment. The old man laughed and he didn't bother to close the window behind him, seeing as it was the 5th floor. But we didn't risk looking out to see if you survived, and we knew the answer, we simply closed the window. Today, the mysterious figure, the haunted at Pied Piper, will undoubtedly return, and this time we all met fall, so we have no choice but to abandon the ship. There are no more than 10 people left in the building and we're all ready to leave. We've eaten all the food we've had. There's no point in carrying an honest anymore. We put on the warmest clothes we've had to combat winter, and we've all prepared to makeshift weapons, some sharp in their brooms, but I decided to stick with my hatchet. I'm still convinced that it's the best weapon I have. We're leaving in 5 minutes and Natasha's point potato soup in a cup. But I'm sure of one thing, we'll be safer, away from the forest. We might even travel from one building to another. After all, we got the people close their apartments before evacuating, so who knows, we might survive. We'll head somewhere far away, away from the military, away from the creatures. I'm sure we'll find a way and play future. I'm not named Rashad, and I finally have a moment to sit down and see if their accounts what I've been through. I'll let you all know, so keep your fingers crossed for me, and hopefully I'll talk to you soon.